We're making. Here we are. Okay, yay, it's on. So, welcome everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is your host, Miss Jaleisha J. Welcome back to the universe and me. And I am so glad to be back here with you guys. I told you every week for the next part two of season one is going to have a special guest that is here for healing, here for awakening, here for spirituality, growth, self knowledge, self love, all those spectacular things, all those amazing things. And I'm so excited for our guest today. The title of the episode, if you can't see or you don't know just yet, it is called The Dis-Ease Within. And I have had a wonderful conversation with Ruth before this episode aired. We had like a long conversation just talking about, how she came into where she is now. And I definitely want her to share that with you guys. So, welcoming Ruth Kemp. She is a spiritual mentor and spiritual teacher. And I just want to say thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation. I know that we share a lot of values and a lot of beliefs in our own spiritual journeys.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and just have this conversation with you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Ruth, can you tell everyone? I know I said you're a spiritual mentor, but what exactly do you do?
Okay, so I mentor predominantly working women, um,
Mm-hmm.
and women who, we find that we've kind of lost our sense of self. We're taught that we need to be strong to get by in the world. We need to suppress our emotions. We need to, people please and all of that sort of thing. So I'm a multimodality practitioner. I went through a number of healing modalities such as kinesiology, EFT tapping, which you've probably heard of. I'm a
Yes.
meditation teacher. Meditation, I think, saves many lives. Um, and so I bring, and as well as a number of other energetic modalities. And so I bring all of that together to take women through a process of identifying, where there's a sense of lack and loss in their life. And then we bridge the gap to feeling that sense of ease and that sense of joy and that sense of safety just to be yourself. Because I think so much of what we're suffering from is an inability to feel safe to be ourselves. And
Mm.
so that's, I guess, a quick summary of the work that I do with people and the results that I want women to feel safe, because we really are waking up and we really are beginning to find ourselves in this world, and that's what's going to save the world.
Yes, I agree. It's the feminine energy. That's what we need, and that's what's going to shift us into a more of a loving and kind and more compassionate space. It has to be women. It has to be the feminine energy, and
Mm.
I love the work that you're doing because it really is us waking us up into our own power and unlearning a lot of things that we have, we grew up and what we've been exposed to or told that was the norm. It's really unlearning a lot of things and becoming into our real power, which is the authentic self, the loving self. The I like to look at it as the divine feminine energy, the just the divine feminine nature, which it heals. It naturally heals not just us, but it heals everyone else that we come in contact with. So, yes, bravo to you for doing the work and being able to help because we need it. We need it.
I think we so do, but I also think that as women, once we sort of get that inkling, once we start to find ourselves a little bit, it's almost addictive. It's like we start to unravel, and like you mentioned, all of the stories, these subconscious patterns which we've developed from, predominantly from from birth to 7. But then also, throughout our teenage years, we develop these ways of being which are subconscious. They're part of our identity, but we don't even know it. And so,
Mhm.
it's these things that they're put in place because they're how we perceived we needed to be safe in the world as a child. And a child doesn't have the level of discernment, and the subconscious can't then let that go. And so it's once you start to peel off the layers that you're hiding, that are keeping you hidden from the world, you begin to naturally build that resilience and that inner strength and that divine feminine, and she starts to shine. And I love that you said that. she then sends ripples out.
Yeah.
She can change the world around her just by being. Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm gonna touch into how did you get into your where you are now currently, because we all have our own journeys. We just don't come into saying, oh, I want to do this. We we normally have to go through a process of our own healing. But I want to touch back just on what you just stated about the subconscious mind, especially as children, because as children we are so impressionable, and we this is for anyone. If you have a child, or growing up, we believe what we see or what we're around, or what other people tell us, especially our family members. So a lot of times we don't realize that we're being programmed, that our belief system is, we lose part of our own identity, and we take on what everyone else around us is doing, speaking, in, informing us of how to move forward. So that's how we make that our identity. And as adults, I feel that, and I'm just speaking for myself, that a lot of times we act out, or we feel discomfort or dis-ease because we are not living in alignment with our truth. And that's why it's so important that we do the work that's necessary to unlearn the subconscious programming that we've been taught as children, and to, I like to say, to relearn it. So really re-identifying with ourselves, relearn the patterns, relearn our behaviors, be able to take out the old programming and create our own new line of programming, our own identity, which can feel kind of, I would say it's like it's a gut check, because you're having to disassociate from so many different things that you've been taught. It's almost like it is an awakening, because it's like you would have to rip off this mask and this facade to really be in alignment with you, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why so often we find that people won't start to do this work until we kind of reach a rock bottom of some sort. We get pushed. Maybe we reach points of stress and pressure which are no longer sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we kind of experience a loss in our lives of, a relationship or a family member or something, which causes us to, I suppose, go into a level of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything that any personal growth, I think, begins with that awakening to a level of self-awareness where we kind of defuse ourselves from the identity, the identity which has been created by our subconscious patterns and programming.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as you're saying, like from the ages from 0 to 7, our brainwave state is actually in a theta state. So we're imprinted, and I love that term, imprinted,
Mm-hmm.
because it really is like everything that's occurring around us in our environment, we're then taking on. We're not able to discern it, as I mentioned before, and so that kind of imprints into our reality. And then once we have that, so and we can come from amazing loving families, and it's just part of the human programming that we're going to adopt these false beliefs, as I call them,
Yeah.
things like I'm not lovable or I'm not important. And
Mm-hmm.
it may be formed from a single incident of perhaps a sibling. You know you might perceive that a sibling's received preferential treatment, and all of a sudden you're not important, and so that's then imprinted on you. And so the egoic mind then decides that, well, in order to be important, I need to keep everybody happy. And as women, that's almost part of our fundamental program, is that we need to make sure everybody else is okay before we take care of ourselves. And I mean, that's only one of probably 10 or 12 that I regularly deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so we go through that imprinting program, and I always kind of say there are two distinct parts to life. There are the parts where we're kind of accumulating those lessons, and we're accumulating that identity, and then at some point you start to realize and question that, and then that's the second part of your life where you're actually unraveling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's the second part then that we find so filled with joy. And it's not always an easy journey, because we need to reflect and face the things which we've perhaps avoided. We've built up this identity which keeps us safe, and we people please so that people don't reject us. That's one of the things, you know, and that can be a really profound risk to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, you know, because being strong is safe, but it's also not being ourselves usually, you know. We can be strong as women, but not as men, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. Being strong feels safe, but it's also, to me, it's a hindrance because it's a shield. It's a trauma response. It's a survival instinct of us, like, of protection because of what we've experienced. Like you said, it could be something very. It doesn't have to be this such catastrophic thing that's happened to you as a child. It can just be something simple, like you said, a sibling could be, you could believe a sibling has preferential treatment, and the way you see yourself completely transforms, and then as an adult, that is the repeated behavior, or you feel you have to protect yourself in certain situations because you're not seen or you're not loved or you're not valued. And so I think as women, we have this, we're the strong independent type, especially as entrepreneurs. Like I used to be like, I'm strong, I'm independent, but it was really I feel almost in a way it was really me sheltering myself because it was a way of protection. Like, I'm so strong, I don't need anyone, or I know how I can't be soft with you. And really, if we're talking about like the divine feminine, and we're talking about healing, and we're talking about transforming the world, like our softness, the way we nurture, the way we love, that's really our power. And that strong comes with that as well, but there has to be like the balance. And that's why I think it's important as far as the awareness, because it, sometimes we don't, what we think is strong is actually not strong. It's really like a survival instinct, is what I believe.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's what we've constructed to survive in the world and to thrive in the world. And I think it's important to not get down on ourselves for that. You know, when we start doing this work, it's easy to fall into judgment and to,
Yeah,
you know, to say, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But who you've been is perfect to this point. It's exactly who you needed to be to get
right.
to this point.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but then once you start to unravel it, and I do work with boundaries to help people understand and put in place, you know, boundaries that are based in motivation of love, not fear, you know.
Mhm.
And so as women often will have, you know, this sense of self where I need to protect myself from the world. And so we have these really harsh barbed wire boundaries. And on the flip side, we can also go into that people pleasing, and any individual might have both of these expressed with different relationships, you know, where they might be a doormat for their partner, but really, really barbed wire at work.
Mhm.
And so, in coming back to ourselves and starting to unravel the patterns of behavior, the subconscious imprints that we did take on, we can start to remove that need for self-protection and that need to shield ourselves. We can come back to being our authentic selves and our vulnerability, and then we can create boundaries which are capable of both receiving love and giving love. And that's when we are empowered as the feminine, you know, to have the beautiful feminine aspects of, and I've just run a workshop on self-compassion. So the beautiful aspects of self-compassion, which
Yeah,
are, you know, acceptance and comforting and things like that, but also giving yourself permission to say no. Right?
yeah.
And that's the yang attribute, but it's still part of this beautiful feminine being, you know, that
Hmm.
we have to embody and hold to make to express ourselves in the world. Mm.
I agree. Absolutely. There has to be the yin and the yang. You have to have the yin and the yang, the love, the compassion, but also the strength, the strong. You have to have to be able to have the boundaries to protect
Mm.
yourself, so that you can, because in a way, that's, to me, that's embodiment of self love, is that I can be nurturing and loving, but I also can protect myself. I also can speak up for myself. I can make sure that my needs and my wants are being met, and that I'm speaking up and validating that. So it's the yin and the yang. There's no, like, there has to be the balance. And I know that's hard for a lot of people, but it's necessary for us to be fully in our power, fully in our essence, fully in our aura, because it's a different thing when you when you pour that love, as far as I'll speak for myself, I've had the people pleasing thing for a real long time. People pleasing is a big thing for me. And I just started learning last year of really honoring no, of speaking up for myself and honoring no, and then only doing things I want to do. And it has changed my perspective because I'm such a compassionate person, but I was a compassionate person with no boundaries, which
Mm.
meant that anyone could do anything to me. And then I had resentment towards them. I had anger. I was like, just how could they do this to me? And they keep doing, but really it wasn't them. It was just me not sticking up for myself, not holding myself accountable to how I want to be treated, like reciprocity. So once I started implementing that, I don't know, it's just been like this shift in my life as far as the love for self has enhanced.
Mm.
And that's it's powerful because now it's like I'm showing up as me. I'm okay with showing up as me. And that's the power in that. It's like you don't have to feel that you have to do so much to just to be accepted or wanted or loved, that you can just be. And that's powerful.
That's huge. It's huge as a woman to be okay. And that level of self-acceptance, that's such a beautiful thing to see. And it's almost as though in you standing in that power and in that space, you kind of give permission and you can be an inspiration for other people to do that. But I just wanted to, one thing that kind of came to mind that people might not realize is that coming to that point, making the choices to back yourself and to shift the way that you relate to people, it can be uncomfortable. you know
Yes.
there is a lot of joy in it, but we also need to go through the discomfort of perhaps, I know I personally, and I know other people I've worked with have, when you come to the, so as I mentioned, we have the process of awareness first and then we can change our choices. But when you come to that point of making a choice that's honoring you, whether it's completely in love, you're not doing it with any hard-heartedness. Like, I felt anxiety. My body was like really uncomfortable, and often that can be a deterrent. And so I just wanted to point that out for people who might be going through that kind of thing, is that when you do feel that sense of anxiety in your body, it's okay.
Mm,
And the more, it's not going to stay forever, it's transient, it's something that moves through, and it's something that we can actually use to develop and cultivate a deeper relationship with our body and with our intuition, with our sense of self, is by kindly and gently honoring the discomfort and choosing to move through it anyway. And they say life begins at the end of your comfort zone,
yes.
and that applies in many situations. So you know it can be so deeply fulfilling and rewarding to start to do, but just so that people don't think that it should be easy, or they shouldn't feel anything. Yeah,
No,
it's a beautiful process of self-love to let yourself go through that anxiety and trust.
Ruth, you're absolutely right. Absolutely. Because even for myself, was it easy? No, it was very, I had anxiety. I was having panic attacks. I definitely was having a lot of guilt. A lot of shame was coming up. And so you're absolutely right that it's the emotions. What I was learning for myself is to sit with it, to honor it as it's coming up, not to run from it. So, I sent the text message. I sent the text message to someone. I can't go. I don't want to go this evening. That was the hardest thing, just to send a text message. No. And then I
Mm.
had the uneasiness in the stomach and the pain. But what I've been learning, and this is for anyone that's listening, is that I've been doing a lot of breathing exercises. So when I feel the pain, I'm like, okay, where is this pain coming from? Where is the tension? And I honor it. I sit with it. I breathe through it. I show myself love in it. When I send, and this, I'm just using an example. In one situation, I sent a text to someone, and I had super anxiety about it. Like, oh my God, they're gonna hate me. Oh my God, this is gonna ruin everything. They're gonna think I'm a horrible person. And I'm having the episode, so I'm acknowledging the discomfort. I'm acknowledging the pain. And while I'm sitting there doing that, they text me, "Okay, great girl. Talk to you later." And so I, and a lot of times it's because we build up this idea in our minds, in our heads, of how this scenario is going to happen, or what's gonna come if I just show up and say no, or put in a
Mm.
boundary in place. And a lot of times it's not real. what we're believing to be true is actually not real. And it gets easier the more that you do it. But yes, there is major discomfort, but the only way to push forward through it is to face it. It's very uncomfortable. It is not easy. But it's on the other side of it. You're like, oh, why did I make such a big a deal about this? This wasn't that big of a deal. Now, on the flip side of that, I will say if there's certain situations where you feel that your boundaries aren't being honored, then those are the things you want to pay attention to as far as a connection with that person. Because I've been learning a lot of times when I've been implementing boundaries now, the people around me, they also honor boundaries. They also have their own boundaries. So it's like it's reciprocated. There's no pushback. Okay, all right, that's fine. But when you're in a situation where there is pushback or you feel discomfort, you feel dis-ease, you can honor that, but also say, look at the context of that relationship or that connection, because those in your life, they should want to honor your needs and your values and what you need to feel safe and what you need to feel loved. And just vice versa, you would want to do the same thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mhm.
there is that saying that the people who are going to most resist you creating safe and nourishing, nurturing boundaries are those who benefited from you not having any.
Okay.
And so when you are making these choices or these shifts in your life and the way you kind of project and be in the world, sometimes there might be pushback, and it is once again a matter of kind of reflecting on, you're coming from heart space. If you're coming from heart space and somebody's pushing back, then that's their, it's not your responsibility to take on their dissatisfaction, you know.
Correct. Yeah.
But you did mention, that when we go through this, and there's a word that came to mind, and I love this word. It's called catastrophizing.
Ah,
you know and
yeah.
it's Mark Twain said that I've had a great many problems in my life, but most of them never happened. And it's
Hmm.
because our thinking mind, we are threat detectors. Like, essentially humans are threat detectors. We are always looking for ways that we might be unsafe. And this is what happens when, our fear-based beliefs and these imprints get a little bit out of control, and we don't have any way to regulate them, and we don't have much awareness around how they're manifesting. It just feels unsafe for us. And so we catastrophize. We think, oh, they're gonna, like you said, they're gonna hate me. It's gonna be awful. And just coming back to that, it's again allowing yourself to see the thought, but not be the thought. And so stepping out of your fusion with that fear, and, really holding yourself in that space and allowing yourself to be afraid, but knowing, still owning that sovereignty that you've made a choice because you're allowed to make a choice,
Yeah.
and really, really sitting with that.
Yes, absolutely, Ruth. I love that that word you use. I learned that in therapy as well, because I anxiety is a huge one for me. So I normally go to the worst possible scenario, explode. But one thing I will say, and this is for anyone who does that as well, as you were saying, is it's really you can honor the thought, or you can be the, like, you can recognize the thought, but don't. For me, it's more not going with the thought. I like to question my thoughts. Like, if something
Mm,
comes up, is this actually real? Is this fact? Is this actual a fact? Is this a fact? Or what would happen in this? Like, what is the worst possible? Because a lot of times when we question ourselves or question the thoughts that we're having, we realize this isn't actual truth. This isn't actually real. This isn't actually me, self. This is anxiety. This is something else being perpetrated this moment, that's now I'm running with it. Now, if you can acknowledge your thought, if you can say, okay, I hear that, but I'm going to move forward anyway. I'm going to do it anyway. Then the thought kind of ceases a little bit. You just it kind of goes down. The fear kind of just dissipates a little bit. It gets easier to separate self. But if
mm,
we allow ourselves to run with the thought or entertain the thought, it becomes maximized. It just becomes this whole other scenario. And yeah, it becomes what you, I can never say the word right, but it's catastrophic. Pretty much, we just go with our mind, and our mind can tell us a lie, pretty much.
mm. Absolutely. Our mind creates a narrative, and that's a really good point, actually, because when you say our mind creates a lie, so we've got the thinking mind and the aware mind, and this is something I teach in meditation. But And it's the thinking mind that's the threat detector. It's always hypervigilant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the thinking mind. So we'll have an experience of something, but it's the thinking mind that then creates the narrative and the story of that experience. And
Mm-hmm.
our thinking mind is running based on these subconscious false beliefs and fears that we're imprinted on until we call that into check. And so the thinking mind can run off on its tangents and create these terrible stories based on what was essentially an objective experience. We create a subjective fear-based story where we need to protect ourselves or get defensive or offended or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
um, rather than allowing ourselves to just be in a non-judgmental space of experience. Um, and if I can just say one other thing which came up when you were talking, because you mentioned that feeling of anxiety and how the thinking mind, goes off um, on its kind of tangent with that. But what I've also found is that because our nervous system is so deeply
Yeah.
programmed, yeah, and our nervous system is so deeply programmed with these false beliefs and patterns which have been imprinted since past experiences. I've also found that, my body will have an anxiety reaction. You get the tension in your gut, you feel like awful, you feel a bit shaky,
Mm-hmm.
but mentally, I'm not matching it with anything.
Yeah.
And so mentally, it's like, so I consciously know there's nothing to be afraid of here, but my nervous system is still going into this
Mm-hmm.
reaction. And it's like, well, how do you deal with that? And so there are certain processes, you know, of course, we want to look at unraveling the core story behind it, but there are simple practices and processes that you can start and just by tuning into those feelings. And then I think we have a tendency to avoid them and to suppress them. So we'll kind of notice our body's feeling comfortable, we'll divert our attention, or
Yes.
we'll sort of rationalize,
Yes.
and instead of actually just sitting with it. Whereas if we just sit with it, sit with the discomfort, the anxiety, which is essentially only a physical nervous system response,
Mm-hmm.
then in due course that will then just dissipate and move on, and our system will re-regulate, you
Yes.
know. Yeah, and that's just a beautiful awareness to have.
Oh goodness, Ruth! When you were speaking, it reminds me of that book, "The Body Keeps the Score." I think it's called. Have you read
Yeah,
the book? And
yeah.
it's our nervous system. So even if our mind doesn't remember, the body remembers. And I will say this from clients and people I know, and even for myself, I've had the jerk. Well, I've seen the jerk reaction of us either suppressing or avoiding or trying to get away from that feeling, and we can suppress it by eating, suppress it by doing drugs, having sex, just trying to get shopping in, like just spending. And I've done all those different things as well, because I just like, I don't want to feel this feels foreign, this feels uncomfortable, this makes me uneasy. But the best thing you can do is to actually sit with it, because it's not going to go away if we suppress it. What we're doing, we're using something to numb it, but it's still there. So that is still in the body, so it's going to come back up again. It's going to keep resurfacing. And that's how we build these negative habits or these destructive habits, because we're
Mm,
always seeking something outside of just actually sitting with ourselves and tuning in to what this actually is. That's even with the anxiety. That's been the biggest lesson I've been learning this past year for myself, is really honoring my emotions and my feelings, and honoring when something comes up, tuning into myself. Okay, what is this? Why don't I like this? What don't I like about this right now? Why am I feeling this discomfort? What is, and then just feeling it, actually letting it just let it come up. And then when it
mm,
passes, you're like, oh, okay, and
yeah,
now I can move forward. But I think so many of us are actually afraid of facing whatever it is, and we resort to what we know, and we resort to things that keep us in a loop of just doing the same thing over and over and over. When our bodies are trying to tell us, hey, just pay attention to me. Hey, I need you to pay attention to this. This needs to be looked at. This needs to be honored.
yeah, it does. And it's so true. So our bodies are just sort of a 3D printout of our dominant thoughts and emotions. And so,
Mhm.
when we, feeling the sense of contraction or expansion in the body is a really good way of, I love it for decision making, or going, is this situation right for me? Because you can feel the body contract or expand, and then you can kind of inquire, as to what's happening with that. Yeah, so yeah, that's
Yeah.
just a beautiful.
Yeah. So, and then now look, because I got kind of like off track. I wanted to like dive deep into your journey, Ruth, as far as how you've come into where you are at and what started the journey, and then what's led to your profession now.
Yeah, thank you. So my journey, I think, reflects what a lot of women have been going through. Like I come from a corporate background.
Mm-hmm.
I had, about 11. So I started doing this work a bit over 10 years ago, and at the time, I thought I was happy. I had a good job. I had a great partner, a social life, all of that sort of stuff. But there was something within me which was deeply unworthy. I felt a deep sense of, I was afraid to take up space.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, during this time, I was also quite, I had built up this ability through people pleasing and knowing other people. I could be a bit of a chameleon. So I could always make sure that I was safe and fitting in places. But beyond that, when I stripped everything back, I felt like I wasn't actually making a contribution, and I wasn't making a difference in any way. And so from that deep sense of unworthiness, eventually something sort of pushed me, and I had to do something about it. And so that's when I actually did, and I still don't know how the universe guided me to it. It was a little bit kind of random. I went in and I started doing energy healing. So I did some practitioner courses with that. And when I did that, that was like switching on a light bulb for me. It was like coming home. I feel like I'd had this deep dissociation from myself, from my emotions. From the age of about 5, I learned to be super strong. I was like super strong. You couldn't sway me. I put up with abusive situations because I was the strong one, just ridiculous stuff like that, which in hindsight, as a woman, we never have to put up with, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But at the time, you go through it. And so, starting to do these energy modalities, and I received and channeled a modality in as well. But it just highlighted to me, I knew that I was here to provide a deeper service on this planet, but I had no idea how. So it was like this light came on, but it's like, okay, well, I'm here, I'm doing stuff, but what's next? And so that's when the really deep healing began.
Mm-hmm.
I Because I had this amazing sense of consciousness, but I was still embodying such deep wounds and such deep traumas. And we do that, we can. This is why I guess talk therapy, it's effective on one dimension, but it doesn't get to the embodiment of things. And so I was going through, these deeply dark spaces of trying to discover and unravel all the pain stories that I'd adopted from generational stuff, from past life stuff. If you believe in all that, that's an interesting conversation all its own.
Yeah.
All and collective feminine. The deep wounds of the collective feminine, and so I went through. I did kinesiology, medical intuition, working with crystals, a lot of meditation. So I've studied that, and I teach that now, and more recently just EFT tapping. So my path to support people has really been reflective of my own healing journey. So I always felt like I can't possibly. So even though I learned a lot of modalities, I felt like I couldn't possibly support people without being a full embodiment of what's possible for people in this life.
Yeah.
And so in experiencing that sense of feeling trapped and alone and dissociated like 10 years ago, it was really about unraveling that and finding a place where you can be at ease in yourself. And I know that you get that, that space of being okay to be me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so now, the work that I do now is really a culmination of all of that. So I work with, in a coaching process or a mentoring process, um, using all of these tools to help women to come home to themselves and to really rediscover and honor their needs. Because I'll just finish with this. I've found that so many of us, we don't even know what our needs are. So you might be a busy woman, working long hours because it's what you do to succeed. And you go, wait, I'm going to do some self care. But until you know yourself, you don't even know what you need. And that's so you'll go out and you'll get a massage or something and come back and the same pattern will repeat.
Yeah.
So we get to the core of who you are, and letting yourself shine, really. So
Yes. Yes. I love that. And the journey is beautiful. I think even just I feel like a lot of us go through the process of when we want to discover ourselves, we are really we're in a place of discomfort and like we
mm,
just something doesn't feel like this is all that I can be, all that I am, or is this all that life is? And so when you were saying like you start off in corporate and you were in a partnership and it's just still like, you weren't fulfilled. And I see so many with clients of mine as well that we just the search or the journey I see begins when we just don't feel something just isn't clicking, something isn't
yeah.
there. And when you said that a lot of the women, they don't even know, we don't know what we actually need, and we don't know what that looks like. And so someone can say I need self-love and they can come in and see you, but what they really find out, oh no, you need to start implementing boundaries, or you need to
Mm,
start, paying more, being more kind to yourself, being more loving to yourself in a different way, nurturing your inner child, dealing with inner child issues or shadow work. It goes so much deeper than we think. Oh, I just want to get a massage, or I just want to go get my nails done, I just need a day off. And we don't realize the depths of what it actually is. So what you said was right on point. A lot of us don't know. We don't know.
yeah.
And so the the work that you do is definitely needed, because we need more vessels to help us women understand the depths of who we are so we can shine. Um,
Mm.
I
And
just I love it.
thank you. Yeah, and it's you know women really are the keys to changing the world.
Yeah.
And we've become, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, every choice and every path that we've taken to here is perfect.
Mm,
And one of the things I look at on the collective level is that women have really had to masculinize, if
yes.
that's a word, masculinize. And I've kind of reflected that we needed to do that in order to meet them where they're at.
Mm,
But I think now that we've kind of fought for that, we're at a point collectively where we can start to soften into ourselves. So we could never do that under the old, the 50, 70-year-old paradigm, when we didn't have any rights, when we weren't allowed to own property, we weren't allowed to make decisions.
no.
So we have had to go into this yang energy and fight for our rights, this feminist action. And now that we've and I know there are still ways to go in inequality and things, but I think we've gotten it to a point where we do have a level of autonomy on our lives. And now we are able to soften, and we are able to start to explore our emotional self, because our emotions weren't safe to feel before.
Mm,
um and to come into that and to make the choices to question, like you said, you don't even know. I thought I was completely happy. I thought I was
yeah.
like a don't mess with me kind of girl. But then, over the years of unraveling that, it's like, wow, there was so much fear in actually being seen authentically. And,
Mm,
and as you said, it all starts with this little inkling, or this little kind of nudge that something isn't quite right. And there's
correct.
something not quite satisfying or fulfilling. And I often, a lot of people would identify as burnout or overwhelm, starting to become overwhelmed because they're just taking on everything. And it's the little things like that are expressing in life that
Mm,
we can see as the kind of indicators that maybe there's a bigger awakening or a bigger exploration that's ready to unfold within you. Yeah.
mm. Yes, yes. The discomfort, it to me is the sign that there's more. That there's more here that you need to plug in and seek. and y'all, Ruth will be able to help you with that. I wanted to ask you, Ruth, as far as when you have clients come to you and they said that I guess they're seeking certain things, maybe self love. What is something that you practice with them to get them to a space of really being in alignment with what they actually need or what they actually want?
Okay, so we do go through a bit of a process, and everybody's going to want, everybody's coming from a different place, and everybody has a different picture of what will work for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I work with a lot of presence, so with a lot of meditative processes, a lot of body awareness. I also work with body consciousness, and whilst I don't primarily address physical issues might often kind of smooth out with that. But we start by getting really clear, and a lot of the time women have never, or people have never really done a deep reflection in terms of what's working in their life, what is not working. I mean, have we even given ourselves permission to think that we might not want something to be a certain way?
Mm.
And so we have a really honest conversation about that first, and then we start to look at what would, you know, what's a different way of being, what's a different kind of vision that you might want to implement, or the end result, I always say, is feeling ease and feeling joy, because joy in its purest, like, your life can be anything, but I work with an inner transformation so that whatever your life is, you'll find ease and joy with that, and then the outer world will begin to reflect that.
Yeah.
Um, and so once we start to identify, where you are, what you would like that to look like, we go through a process of energy work. So I transmit energy light codes. Um, we also do EFT tapping, so that can work with more of the embodied energy, and I work with body consciousness. And so that's through a medical intuitive process. We do that all over Zoom, and it's amazing because we live in a quantum universe. So energy with intention and this connection and the energy transmission, just as we're talking to each other today, it's a transmission,
Yeah.
of our core being.
Yes.
And so in doing that work, it can be really scary to start to confront this on your own, but you're not on your own. And so that's what, it doesn't need to be scary, and it doesn't need to be, I know I don't want women to have to go through the processes that I went through. I've learned things so that I
Mm-hmm.
can support them and hold them really safely to find out who they are and what they really want in life. And so
I love that.
yeah, I think that's what it's about. And more, the deeper I go into this work, it's just about finding women who, we lift each other up. We lift each other up. And so, yeah, I see you've just put my website on the screen.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention, if people are interested in exploring this work, then they can book just a free 30-minute session where we can just have a look at, their maybe their biggest block, or start to have a look at what we can put in place that might help them to start making positive shifts in wherever they're not enjoying their life.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes. Yes, please, y'all. If you're listening, you're watching, or you're tuning in later, please reach out to Ruth Kemp. Please reach out to her if for any reason you're in a space, and this could be woman or man. Ruth.
I'm definitely happy. I don't want to exclude men, but I do.
Okay.
So what I work with a divine feminine energy, and so men also have. We've got so many wounded men as well who are needing to be nurtured and loved
Yes.
to find themselves.
Yes.
So I love our men. I think that they get a bad rap sometimes. Talking about the patriarchy, but there are so many. So yeah, I'm definitely open to supporting men and helping them to balance,
Okay,
that
well, yeah.
aspect.
So everyone is welcome to reach out to Ruth. I would say I would just from perspective that if you are in a space of you have questions, you feel discomfort, you feel anything that is like you're just wondering what's my next step, where am I, why, what am I doing? That's probably your spirit of guiding you to start questioning or to start looking within. And as Ruth was saying earlier, is that And I think this is any healer, any coach, anyone that's in this field will tell you that a lot of us did this stuff as far as the work or the awareness, the healing on our own initially. We had to go find those things. And the journey is very uncomfortable. The journey is very, it can be it can be gut
Yeah.
it's not like, oh, a walk in a like a park. It's definitely, it's kind of hard. I'm not gonna say kind of hard. It is hard. It's hard. But on the other side of that is just such amazing awareness of self and to be in alignment with who you truly are at your core, not what your family wants for you, or not what your partner wants for you, or not what society wants for you, but what you truly want for yourself, like your true heart's desire, soul's desire. That is the gift of it. And so a lot of us did this on our own, but that's why we're here, because we want to be able to help you go through this journey. You don't have to do it on your own. And there's so many, Ruth is gifted. There's so many different tools and skills that she has. She's talking about some things I haven't even tried yet. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, she's so skilled and talented where she can really tap into what your individual needs are and what you need to prosper and to be in alignment with your truth. And another thing I want to say is that we keep saying this, I'm going to repeat it. Women are the future. We are the healers. We are the ones that are going to shift and change this world. The feminine energy is what's going to change this world. And we need more of us to be in alignment with our truth. The more of us that show up in our truth and the more of us that show up in our power, the more that we have a chance of, well, not chance, the more we are going to shift this world's consciousness and heal this world. But it does reflect back on us. It falls back on us to actually show up. And the, I can go into patriarchy and all this. I'm not going to do that because it's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But it's just the power within all of us. We all have it, but a lot of us don't know that we need it, or that it's even we're capable of it. And so Ruth can help with that. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
I
wow,
just
how humbling.
you can, like, we've talked before, even before this live, but when we were talking, I felt identified with, you've only been doing this 10 years, but it seems, I don't know, when you're in this journey, it just feels like I love learning from other people. And so just learning from you, I'm like, girl, what, like, it seems like you feel like an old soul. So it seems like you've been doing this for maybe decades. It just gives off this mother energy, this loving energy, and I'll absolutely adore it. So I'm gonna keep plugging and supporting. But let me ask Ruth, just before we go, what would you say to anyone that's in a space of, I guess, discomfort, or that they are in a questioning of why, or what am I supposed to be doing, or why do I feel this way?
Cool. So there are a couple of big questions, and they're big questions for people who
Mm,
are in it, and I
mm,
and I really feel that, because you can feel really confused and lost and a little bit hopeless when you don't know what's happening. So
mm,
one of the first things that comes to mind is that it will pass, um, and that you having an awareness of it and being able to perhaps notice it, and then also allow yourself to consider that there may be avenues or pathways that will provide some relief. The other thing is that you're not alone. We often will feel alone in this. And one of the things I've always been really grateful for is, since I felt like I was divinely guided to reconnect with my idea of my version of God or source, or whatever the universe, whatever you want to call it. And so to trust that you're not alone, and that when feel into what's present for you, and if you feel like something's resonating with you and drawing to you, or you feel like even just seeing a workshop and you're like, oh, that looks interesting, and just curiosity. So be really conscious of your curiosity, because that will help to guide you into the medicine that might help you and the support that might help you to move through it. And so It's only a transient part of the human experience. You may be feeling something at this moment, but it's not who you are. And
Mm,
so whatever you're experiencing is, and this is not making light of it at all, because it can be really heavy stuff, but it's always an opportunity to move to a different stage of life, to move into a different stage of yourself. So
right.
the pain will usually precede the breakthrough.
Mm,
And so allow yourself to be guided into the medicine that you need for that, whether it's, a healer, whether it's meditation. I'm a huge fan of meditation for simply helping to defuse um, the intensity of the confusion, I guess you'd say, or the intensity of the loss, sense of loss. Um, so yeah, I hope that's given a little bit of encouragement or insight to people who might be on their own. And of course, contact me if
yes.
that resonates for you, because I know some of you might hear me speak, and you're like, yeah, wow, that's really really calls to me. Other people might be like, oh, that's interesting, but that's okay. And so we each have to listen to our inner guidance on that, but you're definitely not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And the great saying, this too shall pass.
This too shall pass. Yes, and I want to just say yes, please. I got her website on here, but also she has her email address. So if you want to send her or send her email instead of going to the website, you can go to her email address, hello@ruthkemp.co. I want to just also say, just to piggyback, that the when we say this too shall pass, like Ruth is saying, it's not saying that what you're going through is trying to minimize it, but a lot of times what we're actually going through is a stepping stone, or it's something for our growth, and it's something that's moving us into where we're next needed to be. And I like to look at everything from the perspective, because I'm very spiritual, so I like to look at everything as I'm being guided for whatever's for my highest good. And so if challenges show up, it's really, even though it's uncomfortable, even in that moment, I show grace to that, because I have grace for it, because I know that on the other side of this is something that's needed for me, and at this moment that's needed for me. So while we go through the rough times and we have these rough moments, because life shows up the way it does, yes, it will pass. But if you need assistance, there are so many different ways. Meditation changed my life, and I agree with it. It absolutely changed my life when I could actually sit with myself and my thoughts weren't everywhere, and I could actually disassociate from my thoughts and then from me, actually me, who I am. That was that was a life changer for me. It was a life changer. And so we all have the ability to have that that experience, and just a bit way of being, a way of living. And then when we can separate the thoughts, like the ego, then we can be in alignment with what we actually want to feel, what we want to experience, showing up as that. So I just want to say, yeah, this too shall pass. But and if you need help and assistance, please reach out to Ruth. Reach out to anyone. Please start listening to meditation. Like, look, there is different ways of tools and resources, but it's available to you if you want to seek and find it. But I think that's all I have. Thank you, Ruth. I'm so grateful and thankful. This has been an absolutely beautiful experience and exchange of energy. So I'm just really really grateful. Do you have anything else that you want to share or leave?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing this space with me. It's been a really beautiful, a beautiful connection, a beautiful conversation, and I hope that people listening might have taken at least a little bit of a tidbit of something that might help you with your journey. Um,
Yes.
and I just also loved what you brought up, grace, and
Mhm.
giving yourself the space for grace and allowing yourself to be exactly where you are is just so, it's such a gift that you can give yourself, is to just let yourself be where you are. So,
Yes.
but Jaleisha, thank you so much. I've loved this conversation, every minute of it.
I love it too. And I have to say one more thing, and then I'm done. Because you just, when you said about grace, I just want to say also, because this just came to my spirit. It is okay in the moment if we're not okay. We have to disassociate from trying to be everything for everyone, or trying to to be that perfect idea or woman or strong woman. It is okay to pull down the armor and to be, just be. And yes, having grace is showing yourself so much compassion and love, and just really being gentle with yourself. And a lot of us don't know how to do that. So that's, once again, I'm gonna keep plugging. That's why we need to talk to mentors and coaches and healers so that we can help you get in alignment with that space of knowing how to just be, just be, even in the tough moments of being, and how powerful that is. And so, yeah, that's all I have. But I'm so grateful and so thankful. And I just want to leave with what I always say is that what you want wants you to. And if you want it, it's going to come. But sometimes you need the tools and resources to be in alignment to receive those things. And so that's what the universe in me is about, having the tools and resources so you can be in alignment with who you are, your heart's desire, what you truly, truly want. And so I send you all love. I send you all grace. I send you all joy and peace. And thank you once again, Ruth. And I will see you guys soon.
Thank you so much. See you.
You're welcome.